David, thank you for joining us on the program. Now, we've seen how the West has shown unity in support of Ukraine, from imposing sanctions on Russia to sending weapons and so forth, as Africa also grappled with numerous challenges on the security front, as well as large numbers of people displaced by conflict. Do you see a disparity on how the West responds to African crises versus its swift response in the Ukraine?
Beatrice, we've got to be able to look at the context of this. As you know, we call it the Russia-Ukraine crisis, but it goes beyond that, as you're much aware. This is a crisis that involves the United States, it involves NATO allies, as you've mentioned. But also I think what is very key is that this is a crisis that is fought in various phases. You've mentioned the military support, the cyber security part of that. We also have the propaganda warfare. We have the economic sanctions. All these, have a severe impact, not just on the two countries that are directly involved in the military, but beyond that. And that brings me to your question in terms of how there is disparity in the way that we respond to conflicts in one country as opposed to what happens in continents like Africa. We've seen that very clearly, that these are double standards. But remember, I think this is also a lesson that Africa needs to learn, that it doesn't actually need to have the influence of the West or any other partner, for it to establish its stance. I think what is very clear is that if you look at, the invasion that the United States carried out in countries like Iraq, in countries like Afghanistan, and what Russia is doing now, irrespective of the justification of, whether it is right or wrong, the human right, the human being is sacrosanct.
Right.
We shouldn't, condemn the same way that, we should condemn the same way, in crises like in Libya, the same way that we've condemned the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. It should be one standard.
Right.
There shouldn't be any double standard.
So with all that's going on, David, should it be business as usual for Africa moving forward, particularly in addressing some of the continent's most pressing needs?
I think one of the key continent's most pressing needs, it's security. And what I see as a big lesson for Africa is to be able to rally itself and be able to solve its internal issues. Again, the West has no obligation to, come to the rescue of African states. And I think this is where organizations like the African Union, should actually, do their best to ensure that, stability in Africa, can be upheld. The situation that happened in Libya, which was, overthrown by the West, is still impacting on the African security. So these are areas, because of course you will see geopolitical spillover as a result of this crisis. These are areas where I think, Africa should look into the mirror and come up with strategies to stabilize the continent.